Hello, welcome to the Music Production Podcast. This is your host, Brian Funk. Happy New Year. I want to tell you about my new book, The 5-Minute Music Producer, 365 music-making activities for better songwriting and music production. I've come up with a music-making activity for you every single day of the year to jumpstart your creativity and help you find inspiration when you might not be feeling it. I think it's a great addition to any kind of New Year's resolution around music making. So maybe you want to check it out. Go to brianfunk.com/book, or you can find it on amazon.com. And if you've already picked up the book, thanks so much, and I hope you're enjoying it. Now on to the show. Hello, and welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk, and this is the show about all things making music. And today I have Jason Donnelly. He's also known as DJ Puzzle, and he's the co-founder of Soundtrack Loops. He's doing a lot of great work, especially you guys are working for a lot of different companies, Acid, Roland, and Antares. You've had music placed in video games, TV, film. It's a pretty impressive resume, and the connection we made is also, to me, impressive because it comes from our mutual friend, Matthew Fetcher from Audio Kit. So, you know that's a good thing when you find somebody through a good person. So, hello to Matt if he's listening. And
hey, Matt.
Yeah, Jason, it's great to finally connect with you and have you on the show.
Thank you. And likewise. And I'm really grateful to be here and to be able to sit and chat with you. And yeah, Matthew Fetcher, great guy, super talented. I always feel like the relationships that I've developed through him have been pretty good ones. So I'm very fortunate to have a friend like Matthew as well. Thanks again for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, Matt's a go-getter, and he's doing lots of cool stuff. I think soon we'll be talking about more of that cool stuff. But
and it's inspiring to know people like Matthew too. It kind of gives us that energy. So it's nice.
Yeah, when you see somebody doing something, somebody pushing, somebody working hard and producing things, it always has that same result in me as like, I want to do it too. And it's not even like a competitive thing. It's just like, every time somebody succeeds at something, it's like, this is possible, like we can do this.
Yep.
A friend releases an album and you're like, wow, you did basically the impossible. And that means it's attainable.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's just, it's cool. It's kind of a symbiosis in a way too, because it kind of, especially if you're tight with friends that are in that industry and doing those things, like, it kind of feeds itself, and it's just cool. The energy kind of cycles around, and you kind of hope that everyone has success together, in their different areas or whatever. And then sometimes we have opportunities where we can, join forces or share our talents in a project. And like VHS Synth, for example, the app you guys put out is a perfect example. There's a lot of people, well, I don't know about a lot, but a handful of us got to help even just create a few presets for it and stuff. And so it's nice to just kind of even have like just a little bit of a small part in something so cool that's, much bigger than me, for example. So,
Right.
with all the efforts that go into it, it's so much bigger than just the small part. But it takes, as Matthew says, he always says, like, I couldn't have done it without you. And I'm like, yeah, right. Come on. But it's cool.
Yeah, it's like, I've heard it said before, you're the average of like the 5 people you spend the most time with. And when you surround yourself with like energetic, enthusiastic people that are doing things, getting stuff done, it makes that more of a reality for you. I guess like if you go out to eat and everybody's having something healthy, you might be more likely to, okay, I'll get the healthy thing, just to just to kind of go along with it. But it's like the good peer pressure, not the kind they scare you about in school.
Right. We need more of that for sure. More good peer pressure.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah.
So you were just telling me a little bit about the founding of Soundtrack Loops, and it sounds like there's a very similar theme as far as partnering up with a friend.
Yes. So Soundtrack Loops goes pretty far back. I think to like 2006, but officially 2008. And I'm a co-founder of Soundtrack Loops, and the other half of Soundtrack Loops is my good friend Matthew Yost, and we met years ago back in the 90s. So he's kind of one of my oldest friends, and so we're basically brothers, you know.
Hmm.
And we've managed to work together for all these years without, by and also maintaining that friendship. So that's kind of impressive in itself, I think, especially when you're, in business, when
Hmm.
things are up and down, the energy shifts. And but we've managed to do some great things. And like I said, we met back in the 90s. We were both working at Sonic Foundry, which is an old company that invented a program called Acid Pro, which was like a really big deal back then. We were sort of like rock stars working there, in Madison, Wisconsin, in a little town for this awesome music software company. And um, we kind of basically took that knowledge and made our own
Hmm.
loop company based on what we learned there. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it is like you said, it's impressive that you guys have managed to maintain both the business relationship and the friendship. Do you have
Certainly.
any thoughts on how that works? Is it a matter of separating the two, or is it a matter of just putting them both together?
So we definitely found a balance in, you know, just knowing that we're basically brothers. I mean, that's the thing. It's kind of like unconditional love. It's like you have, things come up once in a while where he'll just be like thinking, oh man, Jason, why'd you do that? But then it's like, well, I could say the same thing at times, and whatever. It's just we might get a little frustrated with the situation, but not with each other in that way.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's you have to maintain a balance, but there's definitely a mix of friendship and business in there because we do a lot of things. We're always going to conventions, but we're friends when we're on those conventions. We might kind of just get crazy and bring more friends with us. So it's business and it's also social and fun at the same time. But that's the beautiful thing about working in the music business is you can mix those things
Hmm.
um, and it's all about just basically having a good understanding of each other and knowing that that you can't really let your emotions get in between situations. Just that's where you have to separate it with work and friendship, so that it doesn't spoil the friendship.
Right. Yeah,
I
you
hope
kind
that
of.
makes sense.
It does. Yeah, and you kind of like discern between the person and the problem, or the person and the situation.
Right,
So it sounds
exactly.
like the situation is the issue, not you. and it's
Right.
so easy to think like, oh, what am I the problem? But it's
Yeah,
no, the situation, the whatever we're dealing with. That's I mean, I think that works with bands and even relationships in general, just with
exactly.
anybody.
It's just like a band. It's like a band.
Mm.
We're kind of like that, and it's a good way to put it. It's like a band. And some bands make it and they stay together for many, many years, and some don't. And like my accountant, my tax attorney always said was, it's a business is like a marriage. So
Yeah.
that it's going to take work and relationships like that. It's like, you know, I'm married and I have a daughter, and it's as having a family and all that stuff is a lot of work, and so is maintaining a business relationship with your business partner. It's kind of the same
Mm.
in a way.
Well, that's got to be great though when times get tough. You got your buddy there to kind of laugh about it with, and
Oh, sure.
just enjoy each other's company. So.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But thing is now, so he's based in Denver and I'm in LA. So
Mhm.
um it's not like the old days, but luckily we have stuff like Zoom and FaceTime and things for, meeting that way. But again, we also try to meet up at all the cool conventions and Synthplex. We just went to Synthplex, for example. That was a lot of fun.
I saw your
So
pictures on Instagram. It looked like you guys were having a good time,
yeah,
hanging out
yeah,
with some recognizable faces too.
oh, no doubt, for sure.
Yeah. Maybe I can ask you to just tell people what Soundtrack Loops is if they haven't heard of it already.
Oh, sure. Yep. So Soundtrack Loops is pretty much what it says in the name. It's we're a royalty free loops and samples producer, or label, or whatever you want to call it. Um, but we also have other things like presets and and sound effects and things like that, um, like Foley effects and stuff for video game developers and film producers. And we also have we have a new branch of our company coming out soon, and we will be launching our first VST instrument, which we're really excited about. And there's already some news about that online. Um, on Sonic State, actually, we did an interview at Synplex, and so that company is going to be called Array Sounds, and the first VST is going to be called Double Scoop, and it's just basically kind of like a Rompler, like what you guys worked on with VHS Synth. It has some simple FM abilities for modulating the wave files, but the sample source was a lot of it was actually my Casio CZ1. We were kind of going for sort of like a lo-fi kind of R&B feature, kind of chill keys vibe. So we created some presets on the Casio and a few other synths, some boutique analog stuff that Matt has as well. There might even be some samples of my Lyra, I think, in there, the Lyra 8.
Cool.
But the cool thing about the Casio is I ran it through. It's a really inexpensive effect that emulates an old vintage Roland. I think Roland was the original DDS. What is it called? It's the BBD Dimension, or sorry, Third Dimension BBD 320. It's an inexpensive version of the clone or whatever of the original, but I ran the CZ through that, and it just made it sound really, really rich and wide, and gave it a little more of an analog quality. So I think overall that it's actually a really, really cool instrument. I'm not just saying that because we made it. I would use it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So if it passes the test, you want to make sure that it's something you would use in your own music, of course. And I do. I actually find that I've been using it, and I don't have to always go to the CZ now. If I want that sound, I can just go to the double scoop. But what it allows you to do is also blend. So you've got two voices, kind of like I think VHS synth, where you have two voices and you can kind of blend the two, and then different settings for each voice. And so you've got that stacking kind of layering ability, and it gives it that extra layer of character, if you will,
Right.
versus just dialing in a virtual Casio VST. You know what I mean? So which you could do as well if you wanted those sounds. Fine. There is that option out there, but double scoop will be an inexpensive VST that we can offer on our site, maybe as some incentive as well to people who might want to buy like a loop pack or something.
Right. Oh, that's
Sorry, that
cool.
was really long-winded.
No, no, I love hearing about that. I love hearing the detail too. And congratulations for that kind of new chapter. That's a big step.
Thanks. Yeah,
So,
we're kind of, yeah, we're invested. So now
yeah.
it's like
But
it's different.
I love that way of thinking. that if you would want to use it. I mean, that's my barometer when I'm making my Ableton Live packs, and
Mhm.
I figure if nothing else, if nobody wants it, I've got something that I want. And
Exactly.
and then I
Yeah.
kind of trust that if I like it, then maybe someone else out there likes it too.
Mhm.
So if I can at least check that box, that's great.
Right.
I've recently got my hands on a Casio CZ1. A buddy of mine saw it at a
Nice.
garage sale and called me up, and it's like in beautiful condition. It looks
Oh,
brand
wow.
new. But to be honest with you, it's really not all that fun to play.
Mhm.
It's, like you select the parameter and then you use the up and down arrows to change it.
Mhm.
It's not immediate like a knob, and it's
Mhm.
big. And I'm not even a keyboard player really. So there's not a
Mhm.
lot of point in having it. But to be able to just sample it and put it into, live, and then, I throw in the effects, and then you can start really using the sampler to mess it up and change it. I find that just so much more satisfying than the actual synth itself, which
Oh, yeah.
is like the beauty of what we can do nowadays. Like you're saying too. Now you're combining like CZ sounds with some like the Lyra. That looks really cool. I've never played one,
Mhm.
but I mean, cool device, and some of those effects that you're running through. It's a whole
Mhm.
new creation. It's new levels.
For sure. And then, as you know, like, we can add features to it, and you can modulate the sound. It's all kind of basic stuff like modulating pitch and filter, but you come up with something completely different that you might not normally do with just the hardware.
Yeah.
So there's that element as well.
Yeah. For me,
We're
like
pretty.
a lot of the digital synths. That's a digital synth, right? The CZ1. So
It's what is it? It's like distortion,
phase distortion.
phase distortion synthesis. Yeah, digital, but I don't know. It just sounds really. It has a sound to it. It has a character, and at
Yeah.
times I feel like it does analog pretty well.
Hmm. Yeah, it's got, there's like a certain fuzz coming out of the synth, when you
Mhm.
play it. And,
Mhm.
but, just based on the actual programming of it isn't very exciting. So,
Yeah, yeah.
I just
You-
love being able to take that to another place inside the
mhm.
computer.
Have you thought about using a an editor for it, or like a software editor?
I downloaded one, and I
Mhm.
forget, it might have been Patchbase, I think makes them.
Mhm. I think that's the one. Yeah.
It might be, I haven't even tried it yet.
Okay.
Because I'm kind of caught up in the ones that I made,
Sure.
and they're pretty deep too. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, but this sounds really fun. Like, I love the idea of like combining those sounds too. Like you said, like that was a great idea that Matt had with VHS synth to
Mhm.
take those sounds and layer them together, and um, now that you've got this like kind of old sound, but then you got these like new pieces too that are
Mhm.
an extra kind of layer of character. Sounds
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, and a lot of thought went into you know, the types of sounds that would complement each other when layered. So
Hmm.
like you might have like sort of like more of like a kind of bell quality to one sound and a pad quality to another one. And when you merge those, it's a totally new sound. And
Right.
yeah, so it's a lot of fun. And I think, we're only going to charge like $10 for it. So, and it might even end up just being more of like a free incentive for a lot of things as well for promoting other products. Um,
And get
which,
people in your world.
yeah, yeah, just to kind of also introduce the company. It's a new company, and and because we do plan on coming up with some other future VSTs, we have ideas, but kind of have to just kind of get our foot in the door and get started. So that was
Mm.
the idea behind Double Scoop. Another cool thing is we were able to hire our friend from the old Sonic Foundry days, uh, Scott Pauli, to design the UI for it. So it was just kind of a cool, nostalgic group,
Yeah.
working on it in general. And I think that kind of sort of transferred into the instrument. And you might get a little nostalgic vibe from the sounds, but also there's a lot of contemporary music now uses these kind of soft keys, kind of almost analog sounding, light keyboard sounds that, kind of fit almost any genre, really, if you
Hmm.
wanted them to. There's nothing really specific about it in that way. It's not like a trap 808 bass emulator, and there are those already out there. So we feel like it's a pretty evergreen kind of general purpose instrument as well. So
Hmm.
there's a little bit of something for everyone, hopefully.
Nice, nice. Yeah, those sounds are, and the Casio, like even it's pretty versatile,
Oh
and
man, dude! I put it up. I know we're on video right now, but I put it up uh, on my desk here, and so it's like
oh, okay, I
right
see
in
it. Yeah.
front. Yeah, so it's like right in front of me all the time. I had this idea. I used to have like, so I still have these synths, but I don't have them set up right now. But a Prophet 12 and a Virus TI 2, and those are like kind of like the main synths on my desk that I would go to for the longest time. And I was like, I need to change it up and just like mess around with like limitations. Like I need to set some limitations and try something different and new. And I was like, the CZ's been sitting in my closet for years in a bag, a carrying bag. And I was like, I'm gonna bust that out. And so I did. And then I found this other really cool thing online for it, for managing presets. And this guy makes them by hand. It's called the CZPL88 Mini, and it connects via MIDI and it powers through USB, and it's got an SD card in it. And he loaded it up with a bunch of presets, but also you can just save thousands of presets to it. You don't need the cartridge for
Hmm.
the CZ, to store your presets. So that opened like the whole thing up to me, like a whole new world. I was like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of fun. And now I don't have to worry about where I'm going to store the presets, or and you get instant recall with it. Just like boom, now you're on the next preset. And you just load it real quick like that. And so it kind of made it like more exciting. And I was just like totally inspired by it. It was just one of those things. Like in the moment, I felt really inspired by this and decided that I was going to write like as much as I could with this until I get completely like just tired of it. And I did. I wrote a whole bunch of tunes, and made a bunch of sample libraries with it, and it's still there. I haven't taken it down yet. And now I'm kind of like sad, like thinking, should I take it down and put something else there? Is it time? It kind of
Yeah.
makes me sad to think about
Right.
it. So maybe it's not quite time yet. I'm
Hmm.
not sure.
It might also make coming back to it a little more exciting too. You know.
That too. And I'm sure, do you do that? Like often feature different pieces of
Yeah.
kit in your studio so you'll like focus on that more.
Yeah. I try to keep a lot of it hooked up, kind of all the
Hmm.
time,
Yeah.
but there is a fun part about just having this one thing, or maybe
Hmm.
one or two things that are just sort of like you're doing, like the feature of the month or whatever it is.
Hmm.
And you kind of get into it a little bit more. You explore a little more, test its boundaries, and let that color your world for a little while.
Hmm.
Whereas when you have everything kind of going, it's easy to switch between things, and I think you like almost don't appreciate it as much. There's
Right.
because you can be like, that didn't work there. Let me try this other one, and then
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
kind of just leave it behind instead of saying, no, let's see where we can get. So I like that. I like to take and I find actually I get more work done when I decide on a palette. I'm
Hmm.
gonna use these couple things, and that's the basis of this project.
Yeah. It's kind of like limiting yourself to that, and then
Yeah.
kind of forcing yourself to stick to just those colors or whatever you want to call them, on the palette. And like, I also have a lot of things hooked up right now. You can't really see everything in the video, but there's a lot of gear and it's all hooked up and I have access to it. Some things are not now. I had a much bigger space before I moved from Los Angeles City to the South Bay area. Um, so I'm still looking for a new space. So some things just don't fit yet. That's why they're not
Right.
hooked up. But like you, I too like to have everything accessible and ready to go at any moment. Um, but because of that move, I started to appreciate more like the little mini sort of jam stations that I call them little jam stations or whatever. My friend Aaron was here from 1010 Music. I don't know if you know this, but I designed a bunch of presets for the Razzmatazz, which is a drum synth by
Cool.
1010 Music. And he came over and he's like, "Oh, you have all these little islands." He calls them islands.
Yeah.
And just like so and so. And I was like, he's like, "I know a few people that do that." I'm like, "Yeah, it's kind of a thing. Like you group some certain instruments together on a table, throw a mixer there because you know you might want to have a mixer as well so you can adjust the levels and things, and then send that to your main board um, for you know multi-tracking and stuff later. But it's like these little islands, right? So like
Mm.
you might have like a sampler and a synth here that you want to maybe feature. Like I use the word feature just because it's kind of like, okay, now this is the main stage for today.
Right. Yeah, it is.
And
It's like
those
a feature.
limitations are fun and inspiring.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm about to get involved in the January challenge.
Oh, nice.
Do you do that? Are you familiar with it?
I think I might have participated one year. I had some time to do that. There's another one that people get into called FAWM. It's like February, FAW.
With the album?
I don't,
Make the album of
something
the
like
month?
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you're supposed to make, I think, an album. So it's like a song per day or some craziness like
Right.
that. The whole month of February.
Yeah.
I tried that too. But January is awesome. Yeah, that's cool. What do you think what do you have in mind for that?
Well, right now I don't know. I'm
Okay.
trying to do like I set this up with my little like music production club community, clear the slate, where it's because like I've done January now a bunch of times, and
Nice.
you start accumulating a lot of stuff, and it doesn't all get finished, because you're on to the next thing, you're on to the next thing.
Yep.
So I'm trying to clear the slate and finish some of those things. So I collected a bunch of songs that were kind of in the same vein,
Cool.
and so I want to do that. So I don't know where I'm gonna feel. I'm hoping like before the new year I can finish this, which is definitely gonna be an ambitious goal. But I like doing for like 3 or 4 days, sometimes a week, a little kind of like a feature, like you said. It's like, oh, I'm gonna
Mhm.
kind of work with these few things. I mean, one year I did that with the OP1, and I was making these little ambient tracks, and that became
Oh,
an
cool.
ambient EP. And it was just nice because you kind of set it up, and then every time you open up whatever you're recording to, the DAW or whatever,
Hmm.
it's the same. And you just what I do is I just
Hmm.
copy the file and just delete the actual audio clips, and then just use the tracks over again.
Hmm.
And I really love that way of working.
Hmm.
It's kind of to me like a throwback to when I first started and had a 4 track and
Yeah.
nothing else. I had a guitar and a microphone. So there
Yeah.
wasn't a lot of thinking of like, what's this going to be? What instruments am I going to use? There's no option.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know what yet. I'm going to think about, I guess, like what piece of gear I want to kind of get to know a little better.
Sure. What do
So
you let's see. So what was your first 4 track recorder?
the
Which one did
first
you
one
have?
I had was, they called it the Tascam, I think it was the Porta Studio
Or
2 MK2
yeah.
maybe. The meat and potatoes. I remember
Right.
the like slogan and whatever in the magazines. The meat and
Yeah.
potatoes 4 track. There's only 2 tracks of recording at a time,
Hmm.
and it's the cheapest one you could get at the time.
Right, right. I think I can picture that. Yeah.
But it
It's
was
funny, a friend of
great.
I had this I think we all kind of that's the great thing about it. We all kind of started that way and like our generation, whatever, like with the 4 track, the Tascam, and a guitar, a mic, and maybe later on a drum machine or something, like just to kind of, but yeah, I'll never forget when I first like entered that world. A friend of mine was selling a bunch of his gear, and he had a Porta Studio or a Tascam 246
Hmm.
and then a Fender 12 string. And for some reason, he just wanted to get rid of some stuff, and he sold that to me. So I had the guitar and the 4 track in one, swoop. And I was like, "This is going to be fun,
Yeah.
like cool." Now I can like write and record stuff and do everything myself, and that's going to be a lot of fun.
Hmm.
And it sure was, but that was a gateway to MIDI and synths and sampling and drum machines, and that mentality of wanting to do it all yourself leads to, oh, now I can add a synth, and a synth has this many more sounds, and
Hmm.
now I can add a string section, a bass, and not have to play a bass guitar. I can just use the bass preset or whatever. And,
Right.
all that stuff was just so like you said, that was your palette right there. You weren't really, but now as we get older and we start acquiring all this hardware, and I look around the room sometimes and I'm like, that's such a beautiful Nord lead 2 sitting there, and I haven't touched it in a week. Not because I'm not working on music. I was using the OP1,
Hmm.
mostly, or and then I get kind of sad, like, okay, it's getting lonely.
Yeah.
Maybe I should give it some attention. It's so weird that these things happen in our day to day lives, but they do.
It is true. It's like you feel bad for the thing. Like you've got so much goodness in you.
Yeah,
And yet I haven't run any sound through you. I haven't touched you. I mean, it's just you can't tend to it all really. You
right,
sort of
right. You want to have like 8 million arms and just play
yeah.
everything, like, and but you can't. So, but yeah, so like you said, like I get that same feeling when I try to like just kind of limit myself to like 3 or 4 pieces of equipment. Is like that old school back in the day with the Porta
Mm,
Studio, you know, feeling where yeah, that's your limitation right there. You have to make that work, and now we just have access to so many things, and it's like overwhelming at times.
yeah. Yeah, very much so. That's often where I get caught, where I get
Mhm.
stuck in like
Yeah,
the infinite options, the or you can just fix what you did. And I got another 4 track about 2 years ago, a Yamaha MX4, I think.
cool.
Pretty simple 4 track, nothing too fancy. And
Mhm.
I was blown away with how fast it was. You record something, rewind, it's like ready to go. I'm like, whoa. I was like not
Nice.
prepared for how quick it was ready to go for the next thing. And it's like you're going, it's like you're running so fast that you're almost like tripping over yourself.
Mhm.
But it was a really fun feeling, and it just instantly I was like, 16 years old again. The
Yeah,
headphones on and like, okay, now what? Just having a great
yeah,
time.
yeah. It's really cool. I had a friend of mine loan me his Tascam 688, which I also had in the 90s. I had bought one, and they were really expensive. I like took a loan out and had to work my ass off to pay it. But then I sold it when I was, broke and living on my own for the first time. So uh I don't know, 5, 6 years ago, a friend of mine loaned me his, and I was able to bring all the old tapes out, all the old
Mm,
cassettes, and play them back. And
wow.
because it's an 8 track now, I have to have the 8 track to play all those cassettes.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. And then I almost brought it to Synthplex so that Game Changer Audio could use it at their booth, and then it died. Like that
Mm,
day, I was packing it up, and I'm like, I better just run a tape real quick and make sure everything's good. And the motor locked up, and it just started smelling like burning electric rubber, all kinds of stuff like
oh
that.
yeah.
And I was just like, the timing. But I'm actually glad that I discovered that before I brought it to Simplex because it's kind of a beast. And they had they weren't counting on it. Now they knew that it was broken, but I was really sad that happened. So I'm gonna have to try to figure out how to fix it. But that thing in itself was really cool. It has MIDI, so you can sync the cassette to MIDI.
Wow.
Um,
I've never seen one
but
with MIDI. That's cool.
yeah, it's pretty cool. So you don't really see those cassette recorders with MIDI, but that was one of the only ones I think actually. The Tascam 688,
Hmm.
And you'd have to record. So you would basically record time code to one track first. So you set your tempo on something MIDI, and then record the time code or whatever to the A track, and then now when you play it back, everything kind of stays in sync. So,
Right.
but I remember I had some stuff where I'm like playing it back, and I'm like, oh man, I didn't record the MIDI track, so it's just the like acoustic instruments, and it's missing the MIDI recordings because I probably just had them synced and then
Right.
didn't record them.
Yeah. Oh, man.
But anyway, that it's a cool piece of gear if you can find one. They're like $1,000 used,
Mm.
and but it also has a very speed on it. So if you want, you can slow it down, speed it up,
That's
get
fun.
some lo-fi going.
Yeah. That is the thing about all that stuff, though, is
Mm-hmm.
inevitably you run into something, and
Yeah,
a
for
lot of
sure.
times I find myself, I love it. It's the best. Tascam 388, eight-track reel
Nice.
to reel. I love it. But
Yeah.
there's always something with it. And a lot of times you're like, am I doing this wrong? Like, I've got
Mm-hmm.
everything. I always have the manual out. And like,
Yeah.
and sometimes you're just not sure if it's just I'm an idiot or there's something not right with the thing. And, that's, it is nice that we can leave that behind these days. We don't have like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of those issues. I get, I was there with 4 tracks and I dreamed of having everything we have now. And
Mm-hmm.
with that, there are problems, like we said, like the never-ending choice, and if you can always go back and fix things, that means a lot of times you're never moving forward.
Right.
Whereas, there's this desire to sort of have the best of both worlds, which you
Yeah.
kind of can have, but you have to deal with the either shortcomings and the potential mechanical failures, or just the too much freedom where you got to
Yeah.
rein it in a little.
Yeah. Or even the inconvenience of things. Like sometimes that adds to the process. Like, oh, it's kind of inconvenient to have to go through these steps to get here, but it almost kind of it's almost in a way sort of like meditation. It kind of gets you to a different place, like
Yeah.
I feel like the other day I was working with my the Simmons SDS9 drum,
Mm.
module or
I think
whatever.
I saw you had some videos of that up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
on Instagram.
in order to it's really crazy. In order to trigger it with a MIDI controller, there's like 4 steps you have to go through every time just to get it to in the manual to initialize it for MIDI.
Hmm.
And it's like usually MIDI gear is like all ready to go. You just plug in the MIDI as long as the MIDI channel settings are right. You just plug in the DIN cord and your wire and you're ready to go. But like with this, it also has some kind of tape thing that passes through the same DIN port. And
Hmm.
maybe I think it's some sort of tape sync or something feature. So you have to initialize the MIDI, and it doesn't stay that way. When you turn it off, you have to do it again. It's like 4 or 5 weird steps too. Like you first do this, then that, and I think I have them memorized now. But like you said, I thought I was doing something wrong, and then I was like, "Is it broken?" So I went back to the manual, and I'm like, "No, it's actually 5 steps. There's another step that I left out." And now it's initialized for MIDI. It's
Yeah.
like what a pain, but
Don't turn it off.
yeah, so now you just want to like leave it on all day, but or forever. But anyway, that I found that process, I was actually kind of getting a kick out of it. Like it was kind of fun. Like, okay,
Hmm.
that's fun. I have to set it up every time to like, trigger some drum sounds and
Show it a little love first, and
yeah, yeah. So I don't know. It's all about how much time in the day you have to tinker with things as well. Like
yeah.
some people, they're just so busy with their profession that, ours, thankfully, we're doing our own thing most of the time. At
Hmm.
least I know, right? Like, I mean, when you wake up in the morning, you probably can set your schedule yourself to some degree, I would imagine. Um, Unless you have a contract with a company doing some sound design or something, which happens. But during that sort of downtime or whatever, it's like we can take as long as we want to tinker with something. And that's kind of the nice, uh, uh, that's one of the upsides to what we do,
Yeah.
in my
It can also
opinion.
be the downfall, right?
But it can be the downfall because then at the end of the day, you're like, did I actually accomplish anything? So,
I got the thing to light up. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
right.
How do you manage that? Because when when you don't have somebody over your shoulder or you're not clocking in,
Yeah.
how do you manage like the discipline of making sure you're actually getting stuff done and not just, making sure your Simmons is accepting MIDI all day long?
Right, right. Yeah, like I said, and those are things that are part of running soundtrack loops. And if we don't do it, we won't get paid. So that's the motivation right there. And the bills don't get paid. So um, usually that's when I start the day, that's what I'm doing. I go right towards my computer and read email and check uh, the website stats, and now we're doing Facebook ads manager. So I'm looking at that to make sure the ads are performing. If not, I'm going to turn them off so we don't waste money. Put new ads up, put new creative up, talk to Matt about that. So there's a lot of stuff.
Mm,
But at the same time, um, I kind of just go with the flow. And if there is an hour or two where I can just do some sampling, I try to get that in. And I know Matt's kind of the same way, so we don't have to really tell each other like, look, I'm going to step away and sample this real quick. We kind of just have a feel for how things are going, I think.
mm,
um, and and yeah, but money's the motivator, I'm not going to lie. I mean, I want to pay my bills, so if I just stop doing the admin stuff that I do, things will just kind of shut down.
yeah,
And so,
right.
I'm not the best at that, to be honest, like bouncing. I could easily get carried away with
Mm,
something else, and especially having all these fun toys in the studio,
yeah,
or
right.
or even just putting a record on and sitting down and listening to it. Um,
Well, that's justifiable too because there is, you know, you got to be inspired in some level and you get new ideas from that. So I
right,
can understand how it's justifiable. Like then today, 5 records and listen to it.
right,
But yeah, I guess you have to figure out the where to draw the line and
yeah, and
yeah.
and actually, we didn't really decide to go full speed with soundtrack loops until about 3 years ago during COVID.
Hmm.
Matt was working on a lot of freelance website designs and things like that. And I was just kind of writing a lot of music that I would send to my publisher. And um, then we just kind of both had an epiphany one day where, like, why don't we just go full time on soundtrack loops and see what happens? So it's still kind of new for me to sort of be in that world. Um, because I've been self-employed for over 20 years now,
Hmm.
and it has its ups and downs. And there are times when, in the music industry, of course, things are just not stable. There's no way to feel completely stable. Things change all the time, especially with technology and music in that industry. There's always something
Hmm.
changing. you might feel comfortable for like a year, maybe two, and then
Right.
something pulls the rug out from under, you
Yeah.
know? So the goal now, especially lately, is to figure out ways where we can kind of lock things in a little bit longer, or maybe be more future thinking. And that's things that I've learned recently that I wasn't always a future thinker, in the
Right.
past. I was kind of more of a in the moment person. And nowadays things move so fast, you have to be more in the future, I think. Then it's good to be in the present, but you want to have those thoughts about where will this go next?
Right.
How can this evolve next so that you can be prepared for that change? Um, no one saw content ID coming. And for the royalty free loop industry, content ID has been a major pain in the butt. Um, GarageBand, for example, comes with thousands of prefab loops, and everyone has GarageBand on their iPad, and they're all making songs with the same loops. If they don't manipulate them enough, or transpose them, or slow them down, and just kind of slap them together, Content ID is going to pick that up because somebody else did the same thing and released it, and now it's on all these distributors. And YouTube thinks they're the copyright owner of the
Mm.
material. Um, they might be the copyright owner of the arrangement, so it's to some degree, but really the copyright owner of those loops is Apple. They just have a license to use them royalty free. So this has been more and more of an issue lately,
Yeah.
especially with content ID and royalty free loops and stuff. Had I seen that coming, I would have prepared for it. I had no
Mm.
idea. We didn't. We were just like everybody else, making sample packs and looped it. And even back in the day, we were making discs. We had to manufacture actual sample
Right.
discs,
That's
nail
awesome.
them to people. I did that too.
Wow. I
So
remember getting them in the magazines and
yeah, and you get them in the magazines.
yeah.
I've had some free loops
Forgot
in like
about all
future
that.
music and computer music. I remember being so excited when I got my first free loop pack on a future music DVD or whatever they
Yeah.
were doing back then. Um, I was like, wow, this is so cool, right? And so now it's a totally different world, like especially like with that kind of stuff. And so what can you do? I mean,
Mm.
now there's content ID. It's a you know in a way it's great, in a way it's not so great.
Hmm. Yeah. I haven't thought about that in terms of, like when you're producing loops and samples like that.
Hmm.
That you say like the drum loop you make
Yeah,
gets used in a song and then it gets flagged when someone else makes their own original song with the same royalty free
right.
stuff.
Yeah, usually with the melodies, stuff like that,
Mm.
pianos, things like that, that I can really pick up on, guitar things that are melodic, and if they're longer loops, especially like a 16 or 32 bar loop, um, they'll get flagged, and then they're like, oh wow, I thought I could use this, and then a lot of times customers confuse royalty free with copyright free, and or they get confused like, why can't I put this on YouTube? It says right here that I can, and then they have to dispute it, and hopefully that goes through. In fact, in our EULA, we have information about that, saying like, hey, look, we highly recommend make these loops your own.
Mm.
Do what you can to sort of just make them a totally new loop because of content ID, and that's in there. But we also have a feature where we can go in and we can allow list if we can see that somebody's having a problem. So we started sending our demo songs to content ID for the packs so we can protect those, and also have some control over the back end. If somebody does get flagged, hopefully it'll point to us as the copyright owner, then we can just allow list it.
Right.
If it points to someone else, you're kind
Hmm.
of screwed at that point.
Yeah.
Um, it's sort of a gray area.
Right. Yeah, that's tricky. It's not sampling, but it is a very similar piece of
exactly.
music. Yeah.
Mhm.
Like I've seen people have trouble with that, even with their own music,
Oh,
SoundCloud
sure.
flags. Like I made this song, like, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
because they released it somehow, and maybe
yeah.
paid for that little extra feature.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, there's that too. Um, I found that people that use their own music in, like, for example, a TikTok video, if they import it, record it or import it in their phone and then try to like bring that into the video, they'll get flagged. But they don't know that you can, if your music's searched through TikTok and you can find yourself as an artist, and usually if you go through like DistroKid or somebody, you can say, yeah, put it on TikTok. Now you can use your own music in that
right.
video and not have to worry about getting flagged.
Yeah,
So
it's
it's kind
so
of funny
funny.
you have to go through that extra like
Hmm.
step just to use your own material in your
As
video.
if you were using anyone else's.
Right.
Yeah.
And but now you're giving everyone access to your music too,
Yeah.
which, hopefully can help you in some way, but TikTok pays very little. So, I mean, it's not like you're going to get much money for it if they do use it,
Yeah.
but maybe you'll get some recognition or whatever. I don't know. But it's just kind of all,
Funny gray areas, like you said. Yeah. I mean, if
yeah,
you have some important piece of music of yours, maybe has some emotional layer to it personally, and you have it on there, and then it goes viral with someone shaking their butt to it, and that becomes a trend.
right.
It was kind of like in the old days with television commercials. Like certain bands would never let their songs be available for that, and then you
Exactly.
kind of lose that here. Anyone could do anything with your song if it's available.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good point. Yeah, for sure. You never know what it'll end up in. So,
Yeah,
it's kind of like catch 22. Got to
right.
make that decision. What do you want to do?
Hmm. Yeah, it
Um,
can be good for your exposure, but it could cheapen your message if it,
exactly.
you know.
If you're trying to maintain some sort of integrity or brand integrity or whatever, then, you're kind of
Wow.
stuck between a rock and a hard place there. Like, what do you do? You know?
I mean, I feel like there's just so many more of these things coming up in our lives
Hmm.
where the technology is just speeding ahead, and we're like, oh, whoa, that could be an
Yeah.
issue for what we're trying to do here.
Right, right. That's what I
Yeah,
need. That's what I meant earlier about trying to like put myself in that
in the future.
mindset,
Yeah.
more thinking about future evolution of things that I work with every day because I don't want to be stuck, like, oh, I wish I would have thought of that sooner. But
Yeah.
like for example, now with AI, okay, so there's these websites where you can feed them. It's like a generative AI that uses samples and loops, and you feed it a bunch of loops and samples, and then it outputs a long stream of music. And you know, there's something right there. It's still kind of new, but how do you track now whether or not that person legally had the right to feed it those loops?
Hmm.
Did they own the content, or did they give it something they bought from our website? And now we had to add that to our EULA agreement. We don't want people feeding our loops into a big AI
Hmm.
generative music system that everyone can have access to. And because they actually can collect royalties on it, and then, and so can this person and that person. Now all these people they're all making money off of our loops, and that we didn't license them or they didn't buy a license to use. So it's kind of like another thing that we're sort of like, keeping our eye on.
Hmm.
But, it's
That's tricky because I'm sure we all know how many people read the end user license agreements, like,
no, I know. And then that's another thing. You can set
yeah,
these rules, but who
right.
does everyone follow them? I mean, and what do you do? I mean, it's
I think South Park did a good
right.
episode about that. They were like, "You don't read that stuff." Like he's like,
Yeah.
"Nobody reads that." He's like, "We all read it." It's
Oh,
just
the Apple one
it was
with
something
there's
with the their
yeah,
all the like agreements you got to do, and all the kids read it except for the one guy.
yeah, yeah. And then there's like and you're kind of like, if I don't agree, I can't use iTunes, or I can't use this, or I can't, it's like, all
Mm,
right, well, you're kind of forced into agreeing with it if you want to use
yeah.
the technology. Um, yeah, so that's another thing. It's this like kind of like AI generative music that's coming out, and they're talking about labels using it and then like outputting like mad amounts of AI generated music and then releasing it all on Spotify so they can monetize it and collect royalties on that. And it's just it's getting weirder, and it's
Yeah.
gonna get a lot weird. That's my thing. I'm kind of sitting back on what's next.
Well, they had
You
that
know?
one rap guy, the AI rap artist. I don't know if you saw about that.
Yeah, yeah,
And he was problematic because he was like cultural appropriation and
right.
just a lot about that.
Stereotyping and
Yeah, yeah, just like you know didn't look
yeah,
good. When you,
no, not at all.
especially because it's not like anyone or anything. It's just there's also
Right.
I teach high school English and
Oh, cool.
we're all everyone's starting to talk about chat GDP, I think it's called,
Yeah.
where you can just tell it to write your essay for you, and you can tell it to write it as like an average high school student, include X number of grammatical mistakes,
Wow.
and it spits out exactly what we're looking for as teachers. And
Oh man.
it's original, but it's
Yeah.
AI, and it's really like everyone's kind of talking about like we're gonna have to make them do their work by hand in class, and I'm kind of thinking like I think we need to rethink the whole game because
Hmm.
if you're a kid and I've thought this about a lot of these essays we do anyway. They're kind of like no one cares, no one's interested in this stuff.
Yeah.
Tell us about like the theme of Catcher in the Rye or whatever, and
Hmm.
like it's if you didn't if you assigned it to 30 kids, it sort of seems like they're all copying off each other anyway because it produces formulaic results.
Right.
So I think really it's like we got to think about like new ways because if you're a kid and you're asked to write this thing that you can just click a few buttons on your computer and the computer will give you the AI will generate all this garbage. It's like, why are we doing this? Why are
Yeah.
we doing something that we don't like? We don't need to do this anymore, kind of thing.
Yeah. That's a good
But
point. I didn't even think about that. Wow. It's really going to make people rethink a lot of things. The way things are done. And you're
mm,
right. That's another thing. Like if you're giving kids a subject that they're just not interested in, um, maybe rethink that as well. Like try to get the kid more interested in what they're writing about, or find something they are more motivated to learn about
mm,
versus like Catcher in the Rye. I'm not interested, so I'll just use AI.
yeah,
I remember when I was in high school, a lot of things I just wasn't interested in, and then I wasn't a good student. Well, because I just had a hard time getting into but the things I loved, I was like spending my time after school. And like at the
mm,
time, I really loved computers and programming and stuff like that. And I was like in music and in theater and the arts, I was putting all this extra time into that after school, or even during school. That's where my head was a lot of times. But I'm a bad student because I got a C because I wasn't paying attention. You know what I mean? So
right,
like if and I know there are schools that are kind of exploring that. I think my friend Skip Glenn is his name. We call him Skippy. He works at one as a teacher in San Diego. Um, Different approaches to teaching and stuff. I know it's there, it's out there. I'm
mm.
not really in that industry, so I don't know a whole lot about it. Like you obviously know way more about it than I would. But
It's presenting problems, and even before this stuff, like when kids go to school, it's the most technologically um, unadvanced place they go. Everything
mhm.
is it's so antiquated. It's still reading Catcher in the Rye. I mean, great book, but
Yeah,
like I think my parents might have read that in high school.
right, right.
Like enough's enough, kind of. But
Mhm,
you
mhm.
kind of get stuck in the way of doing things, and
Yeah,
it's
Well, it's a classic, and it did kind of
yeah,
pave. I mean, it, sort of paved the path, but it's like learning, classical music or something, or
yeah.
But
There's a lot of other things we could be doing,
mhm,
but it's just every aspect of our life is being challenged, and
so,
it's
yeah,
interesting. It's very interesting. S-
indeed.
Slightly scary, slightly exciting
Mhm.
on both ends.
That's the mystery too of the unknown. Like, what's next?
Hmm.
Like, who knew YouTube would be a thing? Kids would want to. We didn't even know there wasn't YouTube. So who would have thought? Like, oh, now a kid can sit in front of a camera and play video games and like pull in like
I know.
five figures.
I
Like what?
know. I tell my mom and dad, I'm like, you told me to go outside and play. Stop
Right.
playing your Nintendo.
Yep.
Look at them now.
I
I
know
could
it's
have
so crazy.
bought you a house.
Yep. There's one guy. His name's Dream. He's like the one of the world's like most famous top players for Minecraft, and he's got millions and millions of subscribers on YouTube. And he actually used one of my stock audio tracks in a couple of his like what they call speed runs.
Hmm.
Um, and all of a sudden, all these like gamers started flocking to my YouTube, and I started getting like all this like fan mail and emails and things like that.
Wow.
And I'm just like, what is going on? And he just used it in a couple of these videos, and it's got like since I put it out, the song wasn't even released on like any of the major streaming services at the time. I put it up after I learned that because I was like, well, man, if I can make a few extra bucks off streaming this, I'll do it. Um, so it got like 200,000 streams on Spotify just from because of this guy, right?
Hmm.
But his name's Dream, and these guys are all like they're all. I'm pretty sure they're millionaires. Him and his friends, like just uh, playing Minecraft on YouTube. It's ridiculous, and they're set.
Wow.
They've got enough
Yeah.
money. Like it's so crazy to
Yeah.
think that that's all they have to do is play Minecraft on YouTube, and they'll make like 40 grand or something per video or something
Yeah.
ridiculous because it gets like 20, 30 million views
Hmm.
every time.
Right.
um,
And
it's
what
so
a
funny.
crazy thing that ripple, you know,
Yeah.
just from just numbers that big makes you
Hmm.
look at your stuff and like, whoa, what happened? You know,
Yeah, yeah,
and
totally.
like it's a seismic shift in your world.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just and it's small compared to the main wave or
Yeah.
the source where the ripple starts. I mean, where the pebble's thrown in or whatever. It's like
Mm.
I'm like on the outskirts of that. But yeah, and and I've had similar things happen to me where I was like, man, I should. So moving forward now, I always put everything out on all the like you know through DistroKid. I put everything out so that if that happens again, it's there. But for the longest time, I just kind of get lazy. I send it to my publisher and then just kind of let it sit on my hard drive and hope that it finds a home in a TV show or a video game. And but now I'll make sure it's a release. I find that one of the things that holds me back the most is like just coming up with album art, cover art for it. Um, Personally, I'm not like a big visual
Right.
artist, so I wish I kind of was because the two go together so well. I see people on Instagram getting like mad spins because they also are very good at composing a cool video to go with it, even if it's a short 1 minute visual. And I feel like that's one area that I'm just not really like, I don't want to say I'm not interested in it, but I don't feel like I'm as interested in it to want to hone those skills or develop those skills.
Yeah. Well,
So
you gotta make decisions at some point, right? I mean,
yeah,
you're doing your site, checking the admin, working on. You said you're going through the ads, and I mean,
yeah,
I mean, you want to get your Simmons to hook up with your iPad,
right,
and like at some point, like they're just you can't do it all. There's just too
yeah,
many things to do.
yeah, for sure. But like you said, I mean, there's, or I forget if it was you or somebody recently said like we kind of sometimes, or you did actually, we see other people doing things, or our friends are so like inspiring, and then all of a sudden now it's like, well, now I want to do that, so now you want to do this. And I find that I go through that every
Mm,
day where I'm like, I kind of want to try doing this or try doing that, and I want to do this, and then I have to remember like, no, let's focus on this. And there's just so many distractions, and it's fun to learn new things and explore new creative outlets, um, but it can be, over time you kind of spread yourself thin too, or at
mm.
least I know I've done that. So it's all about discipline, going back to what we said earlier. But
Oh, I know that all too well. Like something you want. There's like, oh, that would be a fun thing to figure out, learn, and I could add that to
yeah,
my. And then, yeah, it's just you get carried away easy that way.
yeah, there's only
Mm,
so much time in the day, and we have
mm.
to, unfortunately, we have to sleep and eat,
Yep, big
you
inconveniences.
know.
That's for sure.
Right,
I wanted to ask you a little bit about like when you send your stuff off to a publisher.
sure,
I've never worked with one before, so I'm kind of curious
okay,
what that's just that process is like.
yeah, no, it's actually pretty simple. It's just, the hard part is actually finding or getting an agreement, or signing on with somebody like a sync agent or a publisher. That's like the hardest part. And then once you get in, you kind of can just send them everything really. And
Hmm.
so I kind of lucked out, and I got a deal with a company called APM through Reverb Nation many years ago.
Hmm.
It wasn't even like it wasn't one of their pay to submit kind of opportunities. It was different. They signed an agreement with APM, and as a to become a music library that APM would represent on their end. So they reached out to a lot of artists on the platform that were sort of in the charts, the more popular artists. And under electronic music, I was holding down like number one for Chicago, Illinois, and Illinois for the longest time. So they reached out to me, and I signed a contract with them, and so now I'm part of the Reverb Nation library that's represented by APM Music, and APM is owned by like Universal. They're big. They get a lot of placements, and they have a lot of big clients, and over the years, I've managed to bring my direct relationship with APM closer. I moved to LA, they're here into Hollywood. I've gone to their offices. I go to their events, the networking events and stuff. They all kind of know me by name. I know them by name. And so that really helps. So now when I send the music, it doesn't just always end up in a sea of music with everyone else. They can connect the name with the face and the
Hmm.
music. Um, and I've had pretty good luck with that, to be
Hmm.
honest. So I know it's a long-winded answer. I hope that kind of gives you an
Hmm.
idea. But they're kind of like sync. So the publisher is actually Reverb Nation, but the agents are APM. They're pitching the music.
Hmm. So
And
that's
through
cool.
that, and through that, over the years, I've learned more and more about that industry. I've got to go to more conventions and events, and I've actually landed some publishing contracts with other companies as well. So, but I send most of my stuff to APM. Especially the music that I feel is more like just like my creative kind of stuff that I hold closer to my heart versus like, well, I wrote this to be an action tension track to be used specifically in a scene in a TV show. And that stuff I might send to another publisher that already has a bunch of my music that's like that.
Hmm.
So it's nice to have that option and have those different agents and publishing companies, you know,
Right.
waiting in the wings, sort of, so to speak.
That's cool. And that's
Mhm.
separate from releasing it on through like streaming services. You said on like DistroKid or whatever.
Yeah. So if you're lucky, you'll get a non-exclusive. Okay. So it all depends on the contract, the agreement that you sign with them. Um, Most of them want exclusivity for the publishing and for the sync. Um, so with that agreement, you're still allowed to release the music and collect all your streaming royalties and mechanical royalties without having to pass through them. They want exclusivity just for publishing and for sync. Now that's a really great agreement. Those are kind of rare. I have that with APM, which is why I send them all my kind of more personal stuff. But then there are some that want to control everything. So, like for example, Nightingale Music, I have an agreement with them to do a few songs for an album. They want to control the whole thing. So I don't. They'll release it through distributors on their end, and then everything passes through them, and then I'll get my royalties from them directly. Um, so it's kind of nice to have the APM connection where when I do see things happening on BMI, my BMI statements, I'm seeing 100% on the artist side of things and 33% on the publishing side because that's getting split three ways. But it's really cool to see like I'm getting 100% on the artist. So that's beautiful. I love that. Like, that's pretty rare, to find. Um, Whereas with like other agreements, depending on if it's a complete like exclusive agreement, you won't see anything really on your BMI statements. It's all going to go through them,
Right.
and they'll just cut the check and you'll get the check directly from them. So it's all about what you can negotiate and or what their typical agreement is. I mean, a lot of times you can't really negotiate it. It's either here's your agreement, sign it or don't. You
Right.
know,
Sign it or see ya.
yeah, pretty much. Unless you're like huge and you're Taylor Swift or something, and you can like you have some leverage. But
Yeah.
somebody like me, it's an opportunity I take. As long as I know they have a track record with getting placements, I'm not just going to sign with somebody I've never heard of that has no like I guess credibility or anything. But so you kind of have to be careful of that. Signing exclusive agreements with companies you don't have experience with or your friends don't have experience with, I kind of shy away from those.
Yeah, it makes sense. You don't want to put all your work in one set of hands that may do nothing with it.
Right, exactly. Or they might just be dishonest and not tell you.
Yeah. Right.
You never
Even
know. There's
worse.
that
Yeah.
out there too.
Yeah. One of the
So,
pitfalls, right?
yeah,
One of the many.
yeah, for sure.
If you don't mind, I wanted to ask you. I know it's kind of backtracking a little, but when you were talking about like your VST, double scoop. So I was curious. You started mentioning like the UI and stuff, and the decisions you make about what parameters you give people control over and what you might not. What the thinking is. I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know how much you're opening up because sometimes like you take like the OP1 we've mentioned a couple times,
Mhm.
four knobs, one effect, and that's kind of the beauty of it in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. And you also don't even really know what the knobs do. It's just like pictures that get manipulated. Yeah, I guess I was just kind of interested in what you decide to give access to. For me, doing Ableton Live packs, usually it amounts to how many macro controls. They used to have 8, now they let you do 16. And there's a limitation in that, and sometimes you wind up mapping a couple things to one knob and get some interesting, weird things happening, but it's enough
Yeah.
where you can still have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
otherwise you give them everything, and then it's like kind of almost like, what's the point, really? Part of what I think the fun of it is, like, you get to turn these knobs.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. And make sure those are whatever is on that knob is going to sound really cool.
Right. Yeah, like you make
um,
decisions of like what's worth having and what's maybe not.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, in the case of Double Scoop, really it all came down to budget.
Hmm.
Um, we hired a programmer who we use Juice. I know you're familiar with that. Most people use Juice, I think. So we
I've
used it
never
with the.
used it, but
I mean, I'm
I
not a
heard.
programmer. Don't get
Yeah,
me wrong. I
I
had
know
nothing to
that's.
do with the Juice side of it or the coding and stuff. But we hired a guy who that's what he does for a living. Is he's got clients that just come to him and say we want a VST made. And so he kind of has like a menu in a way, like you can choose. So if you have the budget, you can keep slapping more features and parameters and whatever. But we didn't have that crazy of a budget, so we kind of wanted to keep within a certain amount. And that's sort of what dictated what, or, gave us what we have pretty much. I mean, we also wanted to start kind of simple as well anyway, so that um, if it does well or there's interest in it, we can always expand and add new features with a new version or an upgrade or
Hmm.
update. I'm sorry. So that kind of leaves room for updates as well. But generally, it's the budget. That's what basically
Hmm.
um, constrained us to is what the feature set is.
Hmm. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's good to have a constraint, I think.
Mhm.
Be it budget or just feature, like available screen real estate or something to,
That too, yeah.
yeah.
You're working with so much real estate on the screen, and again, budget though. We could have paid more for something that was scalable and really crazy like that, but um, this is it's just a set static. It's kind of like an app, like your app. It still works on multiple different monitors and stuff, but the size is compatible with different resolutions and monitors, but it's not really scalable.
Hmm.
Um, so that you need some sort of like scaling widget, he said, I think, which would have cost more. So maybe in the future, we'll see how
Yeah,
it does. Maybe
right.
we'll make it scalable in that way. And
Hmm.
I don't know.
I've been into stuff that's designed with more limitations or just fewer controls, like a
Mhm.
simplicity. Like um, OP1 was an example, but like Spitfire Labs, they usually have like a couple controls. That's it.
Yeah,
There's
those are
some.
really cool too.
Yeah, and I can't believe they're free. They're
I
they're
know
great.
it's amazing. The piano, the soft piano, I think
Hmm.
that one's
Yeah,
really cool for free.
but it is nice that it's just kind of, again, like we were kind of saying this earlier, that too many choices, just you get lost in the sauce. And
Right.
sometimes it's nice to just sort of be directed a little bit and say, like, here, do this, work this way a little bit. It's kind of the
Hmm.
fun of like those old 4 tracks, and just
Hmm.
some of the things we love to use is the way it kind of encourages you to go.
Yeah,
Hmm.
for real. And that's kind of the idea behind Double Scoop. We wanted to keep it simple as well, just to kind of appeal to people who might, they might even feel overwhelmed by looking at too much on the screen.
Yeah.
It's kind of a I wanted it to be sort of like a go-to, you know, instrument that, you know, you knew exactly what you were looking for when you went to it. You knew it was a reliable instrument for that specific sound, and you don't have to tweak much or
Mm.
whatever. But if you want, there's some stuff there you can change to customize the preset. And and it's funny because we only sample. There's only like 50. Okay, they're multi samples. A sample for every note, but there's only 50 instrument samples in there. So you're limited to blending those 50 different sample sets,
Mm.
and that's another thing. In an update, maybe we'll add more, or maybe we'll add a feature where we could either sell expansion packs or give them away free or whatever. So that's still kind of open ended as well. But even just working with those 50 different sounds,
That's a
um,
lot. Yeah.
yeah, it kind of forces you to think, okay, well, I've tried this combination, but did I modulate the pitch with an alpha and on this one, and did I dial in a little FM up an octave on this FM knob on this one yet? No, I didn't try that. And now you've got some. I wish I could just show you right now. I can, but it'd be on my screen, and I don't know if that helps much for folks that are just listening. But um, it has an effects section as well, so there's some effects built in. You
Mm.
know, delay, reverb, and a wave shaper, wave shape distortion kind of thing, and I think a bit crusher. So
It's
you know,
cool.
there's enough there to change the sound up enough to keep it interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, it sounds awesome.
And then of course plugins. Everyone has plugins. You can
Yeah, you
always
got. I
throw a
can throw it.
plugin on it.
Right. I mean, I usually wind up doing that anyway, right? So
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's cool. It's nice to have that. I guess like I'm really more and more appreciating things that have like a flavor, a character, and a
Mm-hmm.
kind of like instead of everything, it does this thing, it does that thing. It
Yeah.
kind of focuses on something, and
Very,
you,
yeah, specific, you know, and that's cool. I think
you
too.
get
I
work
like
done
that.
faster that way. And
Hmm.
if I have
Yeah, for sure.
every possible control, and there are times I want that, but yeah, it gets bloated feeling, and
Yep. Yeah. And sometimes, you know, time is of the essence and you just want to work fast
yeah,
and get something done.
yeah,
If, for example, if you get a brief, like I might get a brief or something, you know, I don't usually do briefs unless I really feel it, because you're basically taking, it's a gamble. You may or may not get the song placed,
hmm,
uh, but it's a brief, and you know, if you're feeling it, go for it if you got the time. But when things are a little more specific, when you're writing for stuff like that, it does shave off a lot of time. You know,
yeah,
you get to the point a lot quicker.
right. I'm
Like if
often
it's with a brief, it's something very specific anyway that they're looking for.
hmm,
Sorry.
right. Oh yeah, I'm just kind of agreeing with you that I'm
Mhm.
seeing the songwriting process more and more as just like focusing on the idea of like you kind of get this thing and it's just a matter of like almost determining what it's not and just making it into the thing. You're pulling it out of fresh, thin air. You're
Right.
just, it's nothing. And your job is to turn it into something.
Hmm.
And yeah, having like a direction or some kind of like, hey, we need this, it's going to do that.
Yeah.
That's when right away there's a countless decisions I don't even have to make. It's just,
Exactly.
I didn't have
Yeah.
to think about it. Does it need drums? No, it's the bedtime song. So it's, it's meant to
Yeah.
be soft and easy going. So,
Right.
um,
Right. And you might even have a template set up too for specific genres like
mm,
action, suspense, tension. You know you're always going to use this one, you know, cinematic drums contact set or something, you know.
hmm,
And then you'll always use this one pulsating bass to get the pulsing bass line on, you know, and that could be a template. Now all you're doing is setting the tempo to what the brief is, and then listening to the example that they send you, and just trying to figure out what makes that example, what's the main overall like vibe that's coming off from that song, and figure out what that little vibe is, and then just set your tempo to the right BPM. And now you've already got your drums and your bass already loaded in the template, and right there you've shaved off like so much time. And those are really specific instruments too. And it's not like they're going to go, we want experimental drum. They might say we want the drums to sound like they're from another world, but that's pretty rare. Usually they're going to say, no, we want these big cinematic drums that everyone's hitting, everyone's using, with a build, a rise, and then a change. And then that's it. So that's a template in itself right there.
Yeah.
And that then it makes it even easier. But not all briefs are suspense, tension, action, thriller, music.
Yeah.
I find those are the easiest, though, to be honest. Because, like I said, if you've done enough of them, you have a template, or you already have your set of instruments that you go to every time for those. And but sometimes they want a pop song, and as you know, pop music, especially these days, reaches from a lot of different sources and genres and sounds and things. Like pop music could have a trap beat. It could have a 60s boogie beat or something like that. You know what I mean? You never know. It's a pop song. It could be anything really. So those are kind of going to throw me off. Like, oh, now we're going to do this. Okay, I don't want to do that. But yeah, for the most part, like you said, having those very specific instruments that only do that one thing can really help.
Right. Well, that kind of answers to the discipline question from a while
Yeah,
back.
that's you.
In that
Yeah.
you sort of have to, for one, make the decisions on what you're going to do and what you're not going to do based on that, but also now that you have this stuff set up, you know where to go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've wasted a lot of time just like trying to decide what to do. Looking out a window, being like, I could do that. I could work on this.
Yeah.
Wasted time.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I do that even just when I'm like trying to pick a record to listen to. I still like playing records, so it's like an experience. It's kind of like, it's almost like therapy for me. So
it looks like you got some of your collection right there, right?
There's some there, yeah, and there's a bunch under my turntables which are off screen, but and so it's kind of funny because it's like, well, you have Apple Music or Spotify where you have access to the whole world of music, or I have access to my own personal library collection, and I'll limit myself most of the time to that because I like the experience of choosing a record and putting it on, and then kind of listening to it and feeling its presence in the room while it's spinning on the turntable. But now I'm like wasting an hour just trying to figure out which one I'm going to put on. You know what I mean? Like, what am I in the mood for?
Right.
And or what do I want to hear? What did I already listen to? So it's kind of funny, like just wasting time trying to make that decision when you could just go on Spotify and have it make the decision for you, or Apple Music or whatever.
Shuffle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Random. Yeah. I hear you. Sometimes you don't know what mood you're in until you get there either. And
right. Because you could randomly just go this one. But that's just not fun to me sometimes. Like, it's like, I could do that. But what am I really in the mood for?
Well, I guess there's a place for the discipline of getting to work, and then there's also needs to be a balance with a little more leisure. And
well, sometimes working on admin stuff, I want to play a record, but a lot of times I'm working on admin stuff in silence because I couldn't decide on what I wanted to put on. So I'm kind of like, Wait, I just spent the past 2 hours in silence when I could have had some music on in the background, but I didn't know what I wanted to play. So it's stuff like that. It's just like, you know, of course we all have real problems in life too, but
Yes,
these things occur.
these are fun problems to have.
Yeah,
I'm thankful for these problems as much as I
right.
talk about them on this
Yep,
show.
totally.
So when do you have an idea of when the VST is coming out? Double scoop?
Yeah, so we're hoping to announce the release in February. Hopefully, it'll be out by the end of February.
Cool.
Uh, it's done and it works. We just have to build an installer and we have to code sign with Apple.
Hmm.
Um, and we still just have to get an LLC for the new company. So those three things shouldn't take too long. The code signing is the most daunting of the three.
Yeah, I would
Um,
imagine.
it's some kind of weird process
Yeah,
Apple makes you go through. Um, and it just kind of, makes it just verifies that, it's officially like
it's not
approved with Apple
right.
so that, it works on their, and also it'll work on the new M chips or whatever
Hmm.
without a hitch. So we're going through the code signing process. As far as like building an installer, I think you can just kind of get like you can license a pre-made one or something.
Hmm.
So that shouldn't be a big deal.
Nice.
So yeah,
Will that be through soundtrackloops.com
so it's
or
going to be available. Soundtrack Loops will be a distributor, but we're also going to have an Array Sounds website
hmm,
eventually as well. So that's another thing we have to do is build the website for that.
yeah.
But initially, I think it's just going to be on Soundtrack Loops for the initial launch.
So if people are checking in with you on soundtrack loops, they'll get the word.
Yeah, I would love that. It'd be
Yeah.
awesome if they check in. There's also a demo of it from Synthplex on Sonic State.
Hmm.
Um,
Cool.
some friends of ours that live in LA who do freelance for Sonic State were there, and we're grateful that they took the time, out of their day to let us demo the product for them, and that was actually really cool because that was like, you know, the big like, wow, it's real,
Yeah.
moment. Um, and yeah, so if they go to soundtrackloops.com, we have a lot of things on sale right now as well for the holiday. And, you know,
It's good stuff. Yeah.
yeah.
I'll find that video. I can put that in the show notes too. So
Oh,
people can
cool.
check that out. Link to
Okay.
soundtrackloops.com.
Yeah.
Anywhere else you want to send people?
I mean, I don't know if they want to check me out under DJ Puzzle on streaming platforms.
Mm-hmm.
They can. There's like all kinds of
.com as
music.
well, right? So,
Yeah, yeah. Those sites, my own personal websites, are kind of old and outdated. I have a .com and a .net. And the .net, I'm actually just trying out Bandzoogle. Have you heard of that
yeah.
site? So I'm kind of trying them out. It's pretty cool. They have a lot of features.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just kind of like a template that I used for that. I just don't have time. Like we're doing all this other stuff. And
Yeah.
like I said, I'm not really a visual designer. So it's really tough for me to get motivated when it comes to like stuff like that for websites and things. So it's a template. But there's a .net, beachpuzzle.net. It all needs to be updated. I haven't really kept any of the latest news on there. I mean, I kept old news. I haven't updated it with new news. Um, sometimes I'll just put it on
It's
LinkedIn.
yeah, right. Hey,
Whatever.
it's
It's on LinkedIn.
understandable. You're doing a lot of cool work. So,
Yeah,
um,
I don't. That's an area I need help in. It's just marketing myself and my own thing, like and just to kind of make it cohesive and all one.
mhm.
But we'll see. Hopefully, soundtrack loops with array sounds and some big things we have in store this year or for 2023 will hopefully help free up time for other things. We'll see.
Cool, man.
It's all a gamble.
It is. It's a fun gamble, though, right? I look forward to seeing
Yeah.
it. I'm
Yeah.
excited to try the plugin, and
Cool.
I
Thanks.
wish you the best of luck on the release.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Hey, my
And
pleasure.
yeah, it's nice chatting with you.
I think Matthew Fetcher was right. This is a good talk. So,
Oh, cool, man. Yeah,
yeah,
no, we'll for sure stay in touch. And I'm gonna look up your previous, if you have them online, your Januaries from other
yeah,
years.
yeah. They're
They're
there.
probably on your YouTube or something. Or
Yeah, YouTube. I think probably SoundCloud
okay,
too. Yeah.
okay, cool. Yeah, I'm gonna go back and
Some
listen
are
to
cool.
some.
Some are, you just got to get it done. And that's the
Yeah, no, I
spirit of
like.
it. Like you got to show up. It's showing up. That.
Yep, yep.
And,
No, dude, I like it. I like the insight into your creative perspective. Even when you're under pressure or whatever, or just
hmm
showing up. That's a challenge in itself. Seeing what you can come up with, and I like that. Challenges, those are great. I love those
Yeah.
challenges. They're so much fun, and
Yeah.
it's just interesting to hear what comes out of that.
It's equal parts fun and equal parts torture. you know,
Right, right. But
you
it's
put,
also,
you,
yeah,
yeah,
it's torture, but you're learning more and
it's
more
good
about your,
torture. It's
yeah,
it's not stretching my arms apart with ropes or anything, but
right,
it's challenging. And that's why it's a challenge, I guess.
yeah. And it's sort
So
of like self. You're always, I don't know. I always feel like I'm exploring my creative self every
yeah,
day. It's like a never ending rabbit hole. So
well, I find it surprising because you almost don't have time to decide if you like what you're doing or not. You just
yeah,
gotta get through it, and
hmm
you kind of like uncover things like, oh wow, like I never would have done that. I would
yeah,
have got too critical and shut that down, and look, it turned out kind of neat, or that's why I don't do that. you know.
yeah.
So it's a big learning experience, if nothing else.
Yeah, for sure. And it's rewarding and fun and
Yeah,
all those things.
definitely.
Otherwise, we wouldn't do it, right? Unless we're just like
Yeah, yeah.
trying
That
to inflict some painful torture, but we're not.
that's
So
it, man.
that's cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason. And we'll
Cool.
send people to soundtrackloops.com and djpuzzle.net. Also, the Instagram is cool, so that's a good place, I think, to follow
Yeah, oh
you.
yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah,
And thanks for following me there. And I always enjoy seeing what you're up to as well. So
cool, man.
um, really appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, we'll say our goodbyes to the people listening. Thank you for listening. Really appreciate that, and I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Take care.
All right. Take care. Thanks.